Hey people, how are you doing? We are live. Welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast, episode 206. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of RunChatLive.com. And as always, this episode is being recorded live on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel and on the Sports Therapy Association Facebook page. If you do decide to join us live, then you can ask the guests questions directly. And when you do comment or make a great wise question, I can bring you up on the screen. Talking of wise, Nikki Mansfield has just come into the room, says, well, hello there. It's a great way of socializing and meeting other therapists. So if you are listening to the podcast, and thank you very much, do please leave a great review. 5 stars is always a good number. But you may want to join us live so you can socialize, network, meet people in your area, and of course, ask questions to our guests directly. Gary Benson, founder of the STA, is in the room as well. So everyone's smart, just smart yourself up, see how tall. Hey, Gary, thanks for joining us. And other people are coming in too, so that's great. So welcome to part 2 of our look at the use of AI, artificial intelligence in healthcare. I've been struggling this week writing AI because it always looks like AL, especially depending on the font. So everywhere I'm just seeing the use of AL in healthcare. Hopefully you've realized it is AI and not AL, because that was on my mind quite a lot. So we'll just go with that. Very shortly in this episode, entitled AI Systems for the Modern Therapy Practice, we'll be talking to my special guests, Marcus Slade and Rich Smith, who are the founders of Physio Genie Technology. But first, a huge thank you to my wonderful guest last week, the wonderful Joe Turner, founder of 𝐴𝐵.𝐞 and host of You Matter podcast. I always say it, and it's like a broken record, but it was a fantastic episode. So lucky to get all my guests, all 206. I actually haven't heard these two tonight, but I'm thinking, I'm going to say, I've spoken to my family, and I think they're going to fit into this category very nicely. Wonderful guests. And in this particular one, Joe Turner discusses a recent article in The Guardian. If you haven't heard this episode, I do encourage you to go and listen to it. There was an article in The Guardian recently, proudly saying at the top, first NHS physiotherapy clinic run by AI to start this year. Exclusive new platform to provide same-day appointments with digital physiotherapist in effort to cut waiting times. So Joe talked about, and I agreed, and it'd be interesting to have some feedback via email as always, Matt@STA206. If you feel that this article was a little bit misleading, a little bit edited, getting a bit happy, a bit of clickbait, because it's not a digital physiotherapist, it's not a run by AI. It is part of a triage system where AI is used to direct patients to the right place and basically look for loads of ways where man or woman person time can be cut down, and AI can sort that out wonderfully. But Joe was particularly keen on sharing how, as therapists, as sports therapists, massage therapists, sports rehab specialists, and physios, osteos, and allied professionals, everybody in healthcare needs to really recognize that the human skills we have got and we do use every day in clinic, and some of us may need to improve them, but Joe highlighted things like listening skills, encouraging, building trust and confidence. These are all skills which as yet, and probably thankfully, AI can't really do. And as we need to champion those skills and realize that plays a massive important part in helping our patients and clients get better. But also, as we're going to be talking about tonight, realize that there is a lot of AI. If we understand how, it can actually help us a lot and improve our businesses and help our patients produce a positive experience and help us. So that's the topic of tonight's episode. So it's going to be a wonderful segue from last week to this week. We are going to look at the episode entitled AI Systems for the Modern Therapy Practice with, like I say, my guests, Marcus Slade and Rich Smith, who are founders of Physio Genie Technology. So let's bring them up. Rich Smith, how are you doing?
Hi, well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And Marcus Slade, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you? Okay.
Great. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'm sorry about the rather lengthy intro, but it's worked out really nicely, I think, having you two guys follow Joe the week before, because we addressed the elephant in the room in that a lot of us do fear AI and we think that it's going to take over our jobs. And then Joe commented on that article, as I said, but we realized that all of us are recognizing that we have got skills that AI can't do yet. And we talked about that extensively last week, but you guys are here to tell us that there's a lot that AI can do potentially. And so, yeah, thank you very much for coming along.
No, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
So people who are not aware of you, maybe if you could introduce yourselves and what role you play in Physio Genie technology in any order.
After you, Marcus.
Thanks, Rich. So yeah, I'm a sports therapist by background. I still actively run sports therapy clinics. And my role within Physio Genie initially was essentially just to sort of work with Rich to try and develop products that were viable for our industry. And then I've now taken more of a commercial role in the business.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
and you, Rich?
From my side of things, I do all things tech. So software development, technology infrastructure, and also trying to drill down into what we actually need to build from things that me and Marcus talk about from a clinical side of things.
Working through my wacky ideas.
Yeah.
This is great. We've had a few guests on now with businesses who in one way or another are looking at how to help therapists use the technology that's out there to benefit their businesses and help the patient experience. And you know what? I think in all the 3 or 4 I'm thinking of, there has always been a therapist with their feet on the floor who know what these issues are. And then there's, excuse the expression, the geek, actually going to be Rich Smith, who is probably knows loads and loads about software and technology and that, but needs to work with a therapist to say, well, I know all this, but what do you need? And sort of thing. So together, have you found that it's basically that combination is working really well for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's underpinned everything, hasn't it, Rich? We made the decision quite early on to bring part of the Physio Genie office space to one of my practices so that we could actually drill down on sort of features and the roadmap in real time rather than the backwards and forwards. And I think it was a real turning point in what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also really exciting because I feel like when we're working that close together, there's a lot of synergy that happens, like around the conversations. We might start talking about one issue and then 4 or 5 more ideas will spin off the back of that. And working closely together, we're able to build them out and test them pretty quick. So it's incredibly exciting for a quote unquote geek as well.
Good. I'm glad. I mean, I'm a geek myself with running and stuff, so it's not just at all. Yeah, so it's good to be a bit geeky. So I'm interested, Marcus, you are a sports therapist.
Yeah.
Where did you study? Just out of interest?
At UCB.
There you go. So my first question, obviously, and I didn't want to put this onto you straight away because our audience obviously is mainly sports therapists, sports rehab specialists, sports massage therapists. As a sports therapist, I still feel like I'm setting you up here, but what made you call it Physio Genie?
Well, okay. So we touched on this previously when we spoke. We looked at how do we represent what we're trying to achieve and how does it sound? And Physio Genie just has more of a ring to it than Sports Therapy Genie. And I think there's a consensus in sort of applications and software that if it's Physio Genie, it covers the whole spectrum of MSK and everything else. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think Sports Therapy Genie sounds slightly isolated to one industry. So that was sort of the approach we took with that.
That's a really good answer. So basically, if anyone is listening to this and thinking, why is Matt Phillips again got a physio on the show? I haven't got a physio on the show. It's Marcus Slade. And Marcus Slade has called this Physio Genie because it's not just about sports MSK. Okay, it's about all the other aspects of physiotherapy. So maybe it's going to be useful for somebody who's working in respiratory or with, I don't know, in any of the other massive hospital labs, which I have never worked in and would never really want to at all. So that's why. That makes sense to me. That's a good answer, Marcus. It's not just about MSK sports therapy, so I call it that. Good stuff. That was the elephant in the room, and I'm hoping we've still got listeners. Yeah, fine. Hasn't dropped at all. Needed to get that in there. Right. So, yes, clinical business and a software company. I'm interested then, Marcus, maybe if we start with you, what were some of the issues that you found in your experience of having the sports therapy clinic and that, which made you suddenly think, you know what, we need to create something here?
I think there's a couple of things really. I think one of the things I can say is that I set Payon up 10 years ago or so. Very much started, from the very bottom, the couch in the back of my car, and off I went. And I think there's always an endeavor to try and build on what you're building, especially if you do own your own practice. You have an element of an entrepreneurial spirit. So you're always trying to build on what you have. And there's nobody closer to your business than you. So anything you can do to fire up that business, whether it's technology or advertising or marketing, you sort of always have got your ear to the ground. The problem I found early on is that there was no gap to bridge between expensive software that you need to integrate, and then when you do integrate it, if it's got a ton of features that are just redundant for your business at that time, you almost feel like you're not utilizing the system, and yet you're paying a premium. And then within that, once I got to a point where we needed these systems and platforms, I found that functionality was a real issue. I felt like there was sort of every system seemed to do the same thing, but there was no flexibility in the data, no flexibility in how the system operated for my clinic. And me and Rich met a chance encounter. He was a patient of mine, and he was leaving my clinic one day, and he asked me the question, if there's anything you'd like to look at. Probably like most sports therapists who's thought of an app or a product that could set the world on fire, I'd got the little lightning bolt in my brain, and Rich facilitated me being able to sort of make it a reality, really.
And Rich, was that a surprise to you? Or you probably, in your innocence of being a patient, have you experienced yourself that maybe some of the info being given to you or the ways that clinics were running was kind of like missing something?
Not so much that there was anything missing, because I didn't necessarily have that context from just being a patient. But I think the thing that always sort of stuck out to me, even from like our first conversations, was that there's a lot of data going around, be it if it's on pen and paper or in a management system. And to me, where there's data, there's opportunity.
Spoken like a true IT nerd.
Yeah.
Where there's data, there's opportunity. Love that. What a great t-shirt. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that sort of immediately like sparked my interest. I mean, obviously with the sort of like advent of AI becoming more mainstream, I think it naturally kind of lent itself to being something that we could work together on. And yeah, it kind of spiraled very quickly.
Very quickly.
Okay, well, let's introduce people to the website, and then we can identify go into a bit more depth of those issues which therapists, hopefully listeners, if you're listening, listeners, then do come up with some. Are you using AI at the moment? Are you interested in AI doing something for you? It'd be nice to see whether some of your concerns or situations are going to be answered when we go through some of the products which these guys are offering with their platform. But I'm going to bring up on the screen now so people can see. So basically we're talking about, put that on a big screen for you can see. We're talking about physiogenie.com and a couple of different apps which all come together. And the one thing I do want to get out straight away for people who are listening, because I think this is probably on everyone's mind, we will be addressing this, is, oh, here we go. How much does it cost? Here we go. It's really going to save my life if I pay 50, 60, 70 pounds a month. So I want to get it out, first of all, that there is a 7-day free trial. That's the most important thing. So you can test this out. And then if you do decide, you can cancel any time. And if you do decide to go with it, then it is, ready for this? £14.99 a month. Oh, I just realized I sound like I'm on some shopping channel. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised myself. And you know, it's like, I mean, the STA is not about kind of telling you need this or you don't need this. It's totally up to you. But one thing I am really aware of after being with you guys for so long and myself in clinics is price is paramount. It's really important, and there's some hard decisions out there. But £14.99 a month sounded very reasonable to me. And with that, we'll go back to our guests to have an idea of what that £14.99 a month is made up of.
Yeah, so we developed the Saiph system as a mobile app that facilitates your clinical assessment. So there's 3 tools within the app. So we have video analysis, which is a common theme in a lot of assessment apps. We then have a 3-point range of motion assessment. So this is essentially regional assessment, and you can drop 3 points on the screen and then calculate your angle. And then we have a beta version of the AI-powered range of motion assessment. So this is an AI-powered assessment that calculates the range of motion. And then attached to the app, you have a patient portal. So when you've recorded your assessment on the app, all of the data pulls through automatically to your portal. So there's no need to write up any of the results, or if you like I am, writing everything on whiteboards and then transferring it over. This automates that whole process. There's a couple of cool little features in there as well, such as voice dictation. So if there's any observations you're picking up during your assessment and you speak back to the voice dictation feature, it will actually then transcribe all of that into your patient notes. So yeah, it's sort of a one-stop shop for assessment and then patient management.
Let's go to the assessment first of all. So yeah, a lot of people are making they do want that facility, and I like it already because there are other bits of software out there, free software as well, which will allow you to measure joint angles and things. But straight away, I'm thinking, yeah, there's probably too much information there. They can be a little bit overcomplicated, and they don't look too pretty when they're free. But yeah, so when it comes to assessment, so you've got this. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the AI side of things? How is it going to save you time compared to using another app out there, which allows you to measure angles?
I'll let you shoot on that.
Tech question there, Rich.
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one then. So yeah, for the AI range of motion assessment, the goal we had in mind for that is that you can stand in front of your patient. It will take you through each of the measurements that you want to take for whatever region you're measuring, and you can just instruct your patient to perform the action, and it will capture the angle for you.
So no dragging lines, no kind of trying to get a horizontal line. That's all done for you.
All done for you, yeah. So all you have to do is hit save on each measurement, and it will move you on automatically to the next one. And in terms of saving time, me and Marcus tested the shoulder assessment on that, which is currently the beta region that we're releasing. And we got that done in about 2.5 minutes for a full shoulder assessment.
And that's from assessment with all of those outcomes actually populated in your patient results.
So you could do your full shoulder assessment, have it all pull through to your portal, and generate a PDF report off the back of that, pretty much like within 5 minutes. Sounds
pretty cool. What do we like? Because gait analysis is my little passion, but what do we like for kind of reliability, and are there measures you need to put into place to make sure that you are getting intra and inter-rater reliability for each time you take that measurement? Or
so when you first do your assessment, it'll ask you to calibrate the screen, and that takes all the measurements that you need ready, and then you can just go. You don't need to enter anything in off the back of that.
Okay. I guess you just got to make sure you're standing in the same place each time, no angles, no kind of parallel view, because measurements can change. I suppose even AI can get it wrong if you're standing at a slight angle. Or
yeah, there is an element of like user reliability, but we've tried to build it to be as robust as possible. So for example, for the shoulder assessment, we can actually track movement towards the camera as well as to the side. So if you're doing, say, shoulder flexion and shoulder abduction, you don't need to have your patient turn around at all. They can just do that facing you. So once they're in position, the goal that me and Marcus have had is they're in the position. It's our job now to facilitate the data capture. We should be doing our job at that point.
Sounds pretty good. So there's something which I imagine listeners are doing every day, taking assessments and referring to them later on to see if you're achieving your goals. And by the sounds of it, anyone who currently is either doing it by hand or using a goniometer or something, or using an app where you have to drag it, they're a nightmare. And this can all be done with iPhones, as long as it's kind of fairly new, then anything will cope with the system requirements.
Yeah.
We've released Android, and we're just waiting on iPhone approval.
Oh really? You went Android first? That's respect. Yes. Yeah, normally it's the other way around. That is a problem with a lot of. I've come into, I've talked to a lot of developers, and it's like, we'll get iOS sorted first of all, and then one day we'll do Android. But you guys have got Android sorted already. That's nice. Fantastic. I've got a question here already. Questions are coming in thick and fast. So let's go to. We might need to talk about some of the other things which are available on this, but based on what we've talked about so far, Gary, founder of the STA, said, good question, Gary, is 7 days enough time to fully appreciate or test functionality, given that most therapists are busy in clinic and have busy lives? Are they going to see how much this software can do for them in 7 days?
This is absolutely agree. This is something that me and Rich have touched on, and we have touched on the flexibility we have with this. Because it's a new release product, it's something that we are listening to. If it needs to be stretched, then absolutely we have the flexibility to do that. The reality is we want people to feel comfortable with the system before they decide to deploy it in practice. Obviously, running my own practice, I understand the need for that as well.
So that's interesting, because this is something we were talking off air as well. I mean, this is kind of your baby, and you need as much feedback as possible to have different versions and stuff. So that's interesting to know. So if feedback did come back saying, I love the system, but I need a little bit longer, then that's something you might change in the
absolutely
future
100%.
versions. Good stuff. Good answers. Oh, you've had it now. Nikki's asked a question. That was an easy one from Gary. Here we go, Nikki. Go on. Go on, let's see what Nikki said. Nikki Mansfield has said, I'm not using AI. I haven't seen a place for it yet in my practice. I resisted putting my diary online for years. I'm such a control freak, so I guess I'm going to take some persuading. I told you it's going to be hard. But yeah, let's talk about maybe that a little bit. Plenty of reasons why people don't want to use AI. It could be, or Nikki's young, just out of her teenage years, but it could be that they're older. It could be they're a bit of a kind of phobia against technology. But yeah, how do you help people overcome these obstacles?
I think that the biggest thing I would say on that is the idea that AI is this all-encompassing sort of thing that's here to disrupt. The AI is a facilitator. So especially in the system that we've built, it's not the whole package isn't the AI. The AI is just part of the system. So I think when we look at AI technology, it's having an understanding of what it's trying to achieve, and not that it's just here to do the overall task. But that is then down to the people implementing the technology to sort of convey that message. I suppose touching on the point at the start with this new application that's been in testing in Scotland, the AI physiotherapy clinic. I think that's sort of one end of the scale where you have a complete solution essentially that strips away the human contact. Whether or not it does that, obviously, jury's out until the full sort of scope of the picture comes back. But with the system we've developed, it's more about how can we make certain processes easy, and then how can we take the data that's captured and make it powerful. So a couple of the things with the portal that happen when you have captured your assessment, the data pulls through to your portal. Now, what the system will now do is it will intuitively tell you if the patient's progressed since the last appointment. It will actually give you percentage indicators on that progress. So it's not just about does it capture the assessment and does it do it in a cool way that's AI powered. It's more about the whole flow of data that comes through the system and how can we make that usable. And one of the things that I found early on, and I sort of set my stall out with Rich on this and said I wouldn't bring it into my practice until I was fully happy that it actually did what I needed it to do. It was that part that really excited me. It was the fact that we now have this system where I can record a range of motion assessment in several minutes, but not only do I get the value of automated data population, so I don't have to write all that information up, I now get to see whether that patient's improved, and I can actually show my patient that data, and it's corroborated in a way that's readable, understandable, and also it's intuitive for the patient. So I think that was the most important part for me, is understanding that AI is not this robot that's going to come in and disrupt our workplace. It's there to facilitate. It's down to how we implement it that's important.
Very good. I like it. So Gary came back with a good question here again. This is good because you're getting questions now from actual therapists, and this was on my mind as well. So Gary says, does this system work with passive testing as well as active ROM testing? So is there a way of it recording and calculating you actually moving that person's arm up and then seeing what angle you achieve lifting as opposed to the patient doing it actively?
Yeah, so we support custom measurements in the app. So through like use of the existing features in the app, we could facilitate those sort of measurements for sure. So one of the things we wanted to do is provide flexibility around different types of measurements that people could capture, and we also wanted them to be treated as exactly the same as any other measurement. So you can define your own custom measurements, associate them to whatever regions or no region you want, add them into your assessments through the app, and they'll pull through to the portal as they would any other assessment measurement as well.
One of the big things with that that we picked up on early on, so the test that we used for that was a knee valgus measurement when somebody was performing a lunge. And that drew from an application I used to use for video analysis in clinic, where I could almost get the measurement, but then I would have to put that into the system, and I would have to interpret that data. With this, we can now actually customize those measurements, and we can assign them, so it will still pick up that intuitive progress flow in your patient portal without you actually having to sort of input that data manually yourself.
Time saver. So I'm just trying to picture then. So if you can have it, let's imagine an ideal scenario. You can do it on an iPad, I presume. You can do it, or
when iOS is out, yeah.
Yeah, no, so yeah, but okay, so you can do it on like a tablet. I'm thinking of a tablet on a tripod, so you're getting that reliability with the right lighting and everything. And then patients facing the camera, and they're in the right spot, maybe across on the floor or something. Then you are raising their arm up to the point where maybe it just doesn't want to go any further. Then the AI will still be able, even though you're standing there, maybe holding that arm, can the AI still calculate that angle?
So that would be facilitated by probably one of our video analysis options. So you would record the video, and then you can go back through and annotate the video. So, for example, in that situation, you would stop recording the video. You could then draw on your angle and say, for example, the shoulder assessment off the back of the video. It doesn't have to be from the AI. So if, for example, you like the idea of the app, but maybe some of the AI features, because it's only beta, aren't there yet, or you don't quite trust it, we can actually facilitate the data capture through any of the other assessment modes as well. And
then once you've calculated the angle, you still have the benefit of it being recorded, and then all that put through to the nice. Okay, good question, Kay. I like that. What does Nikki come back to say? Young Nikki says, I can see a sector of our client base is going to be very drawn to the statistical presentation of the regression. Yeah, it's an important part, isn't it? It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it does help a lot of people who do want to see the stats. It's the same. I'm just thinking running gait analysis, where some people say, oh, why have you got all the bells and the lights and the colors? It's because to get that therapeutic alliance with your client, if they're going to do what you tell them to do, if they're going to believe you and do their exercises or their rehab or sleep better or eat better, it helps. That buy-in is important. A lot of people do get that buy-in and that respect from being impressed professionally.
We also provide, there's also intuitive graphs for progress over time. So when you enter the patient portal, and you click your patient, the first thing you'll see before you get through to the range of motion screen is you'll see a graph over time, a regional graph. So you can select on your body chart the region, and it will show you your assessment progress over time, which we thought was a really cool feature. If you just wanted to show your patient, this is how you've been getting on, and you can see over time if there's any changes, any lulls, and you can make informed decisions on the back of that.
Very cool. Sounds good. I'm going to bring this might not do it justice. I'll put a few links in to better quality images of this, but I'm going to put this up here. Let's change it to that. You can't really see on the screen here, but basically, yeah, it's got an idea here of some bar charts and the kind of client typical kind of anatomical position there, and it's got shaded areas and stats and all sorts of stuff, which looks very nice and neat. And it shows the app as well. So, because that's something you guys from reading on the website put quite a lot of importance to, was the presentability of it and the quality of the PDFs and stuff. That's something you put some time into?
Absolutely. I think it was the most important part of the whole process, really, is if we're going to focus on streamlining the approach and making the data really powerful, it needs to be presentable, and it needs to be presented in a way that's easy, efficient, and essentially you want to be able to not just use it yourself, but to show your patient.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think like on the data side of things, like the ideal goal for any sort of representation of the data is you shouldn't feel yourself having to think about what you're looking at. It should just look intuitive and feel intuitive, and the insights that you draw from it should just feel natural. So that's something that we've tried to aim for, at least from day one on that.
I don't know if you've done this, and forgive me if you haven't done it yet, but I think it'd be something you could quite do easily. But is there the ability for clinics to put their own logo in there or something? So if they are sending the PDF, it can look like it's come from them rather than, is that there? Is it already? Marcus is nodding like.
I'm not sure if it's been put in yet, but I know that it's something we can do, isn't it, Rich?
Yeah, it's in our roadmap. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's quite a useful one as well, because then the clinic themselves are selling their brand, and I mean, you can still have your name on it somewhere, so you know what software they're using. But I think that's quite cool. Great. Where else? So we've talked about assessment, which is an area we're always talking on the podcast about how a lot of the time, depending on the client, but in most cases, we need to devote more time to the subjective assessment, because that's when we're actually listening to the client and using all those wonderful human skills that AI probably can't. It's where we're showing the client empathy, and we're giving an answer based on not just what they're saying and not just words coming into our ears, but how they're acting and how they're pausing and stuff, which AI at the moment probably can't do as well as us. So that's great, because that would mean we have to have less time using your stuff on the actually objective assessment, which is great. What other areas have you covered where you think therapists are losing time and AI can help?
So we have another product, the Orion CMS. So as a sort of continuation of the portal, and this will be released shortly. This is sort of an exclusive to that, actually. Essentially, the CMS is the next step up from the portal. This will also fully integrate with the Saiph app. You don't need to have a Saiph subscription to have the CMS, but it will work as the portal does, essentially, in terms of data migration. But the CMS then has all of those other features on an organizational level. What we've sort of figured out over the past few months is that essentially we have the app, which can power your assessment, but it might not be for everybody, and that's understandable. We have the portal, which is a really cool sort of entry-level CMS for perhaps sort of new therapists who are trying to digitize files but don't want to wade through the sort of the mess of all the CMSs that are available. Or maybe you are in a position where you don't want to shell out, a load of cash on an expensive CMS if you don't need all the features. The platform that comes alongside Saiph, which is the web portal, is perfect for that. And then the transition naturally is into Orion once you get to the point where you need something a bit more comprehensive.
Got you. So with Saiph.AI, which incidentally, for those who see the podcast, is Saiph.AI, there is the ability there to add patients and appointments and all that sort of stuff as well. So that may be something which you're paying for with another system, which has got extra stuff you don't actually need. So you're suggesting that this might kind of cover that, and you've got it done here as well. Yeah. Oh, they're both nodding their head if you listen to the podcast. They're both nodding their head in agreement. That's cool, because it's important, isn't it? Because one of the problems out there is there's some great jumps in technology, and there's systems out there, but before you know it, it's a bit like streaming, isn't it? You've got Amazon Prime, you've got Apple, you've got Netflix, and suddenly you're thinking, I've got 4 streaming services on, and Spotify. So I think it's really important that there is a bit more amalgamation between these, and you're not paying for 5 monthly subscriptions. Otherwise, you're defeating the purpose, aren't you? So it's good to hear.
And I think as well, just to touch on your point,
and it's the feature thing. I think you're coming from that.
Sorry, we got a bit delayed there.
There was a bit of delay. Who wants to go first, Marcus or Rich?
You go, Rich.
Just wanted to touch on your point about where AI could possibly fit into like other features and where it could save time. And I think one of the important things that we're trying to do is not just throw AI at every aspect of every sort of interaction that you have with your patient or your data or your management system, because it's not always appropriate. And I think there's certainly from a tech sort of side of things, there's a tendency to jump straight to like an AI solution where it's not necessarily needed, and you can end up having to increase the cost to like fund all these AI powered features when actually you don't really need it. So we're kind of being a bit tactical as to where we actually apply the AI, especially while people are still deciding whether or not they trust it in the first place. And then following on from that, we can really dial in to see where the value is. So it's not for us, I guess it's not sort of like a one-time build and then it's out there and we'll wash our hands of it. It's an ongoing process of refining it, improving it, and really trying to add value with AI where it's actually needed, rather than just trying to throw it in for more buzzwords.
Makes sense. Sounds good. Yes. Sorry, Marcus, you were going to say, or did Rich cover what you were going to say?
Yeah, absolutely, he did. Yeah, I think, like I say, I think that the for me personally, when we started to test the product, the most impressive things for me were the automations and the data presentation, and then seeing that come to life in the CMS, especially where it's sort of blown up even more. That was the most impressive thing, and that doesn't actually involve any AI. That's all done through the technology. I think that was definitely something that we picked up on early on when we were sort of going through, as you do, LinkedIn and those kind of platforms where you put in the feelers out to see what people's thoughts are with different kinds of technology, and the resistance to AI within that was quite obvious. But that allowed us to sort of pivot in different places where we needed to.
Excellent. Don't forget, people, if you're listening live, then fire some questions our way. Gary has just followed up with the passive. Yeah, I mean, it's an integral part, being able to perform that passive measurement after the active, maybe to see whether the pain is different if someone's lifting the arm, and getting a ROM measurement might be, would be an important feature as well. So there, that's great feedback. Gary, Glenn Murphy, Sir Glenn Murphy, MBE, is agreeing with Nikki, saying there is a sector of our clients that's going to be very drawn to it. I mean, I think a lot of clients, we've talked about this on the show before with various guests, there is, like it or not, depending on, regardless of what you as a therapist like, we are heading towards people measuring you, judging you by the cover. They are going to judge your business by the cover and the technology you're using. There's going to be a few who prefer it if they can still pay with cash, but most people these days have got a second to do, chip, put it against the reader and walk off. They don't want to be fumbling around or carrying cash in their pocket. So it is probably an important thing, which is going to be part of marketing, I imagine. And this is something that could look good on the website and look good when first-time patients come through.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's the thing. But I do think that companies like ours and companies in this space have a responsibility to, number one, deliver products that are commercially viable and are going to support businesses, as Rich said earlier on, not just slapping AI onto something for the sake of it. It's about, can we actually make a difference? Can we actually support and improve workflows? And then within that, it's about sort of sharing the message of what the AI is actually doing or what the technology is doing, rather than sort of just steamrolling ahead with the technology and expecting people to fall into line, I suppose.
Good point. Right, questions are coming in now. Thank you, Muscle Mechanics. This is something which definitely we want to address. Security and safety. So the question here is, where are the images stored, e.g. cloud or local, and is there a consent form we can use? Great question, Muscle.
Yep. So I'll take the images question then. So they're all the media is stored on the cloud. So any images that you take aren't stored on your phone. They're not stored locally on the portal or anything like that. They're all stored securely with Amazon Web Services, as is our database, and all of our other infrastructure is stored securely on there. We've gone through a security check with Amazon themselves, and that's all been good. And addressing sort of like security upkeep is going to be an ongoing thing for our business. And in terms of the consent form, I think that's maybe one for Marcus, as you're probably more on across the clinical side of that.
So with the Saiph platform, so the portal, you have the ability to insert SOAP notes, generate password protected reports, and all of your assessment notes. At the moment, there's not a feature for consent forms. However, as we've alluded to in the past, especially with the Orion system when it arrives, we are in the market to develop features that people need. So if that's a feature that is something that people want to see, then it's something that we can definitely look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like if it is something people want to see, we can reach out and find out like what actually needs to be in the form itself, like what content do you guys need, and we can really try and like dial that in to be as relevant as possible, or at least as flexible as possible, so that it's useful for everyone.
What have we got in terms of support then? I mean, if someone did want to call you up, something wasn't working, then what is there? Is there a number they can call, or is it emails, or what happens there?
I think we've got support emails out, and also I think my phone number is available on the App Store.
There you go. And do you have any problems yet with people not being able to get hold of you or anything like that?
No, nothing yet. No.
Do you find people are using that number much, or in
so
terms
far
of needing support?
So far, no. No support needed, but very available for anyone who does need support, or if anyone just wants to talk through any of the features anymore, or if there are any concerns, like more than happy to give out again my email or contact details. Especially from the tech side, I can't necessarily speak to everything clinical, but if it's about the tech side of things, more than happy to jump on a call or jump on an email with anyone.
I think from a clinical point of view, sort of especially on the implementation side, the same goes really. Again, I think for the newer therapists coming into the industry that are looking at this kind of thing and wondering where it might fit, or even more established clinics that are transitioning perhaps to digital notes or transitioning away from technology to save cost, where this might be a perfect fit. That's definitely something I can assist with.
Great, good stuff. Is there much of a learning curve? I'm not going to ask you, Rich, because obviously for you it's like there's no learning curve at all. But Marcus, being a humble sports therapist, was there a learning curve to use the system at all for people who are a bit worried?
No, absolutely not. And that probably sounds like sales speech, but no, it's fairly straightforward to use. I think once you've been into the system once and it's talked you through those initial phases, fairly straightforward. And the web portal itself is it's all automated and self-explanatory, so everything is there for you. There's no sort of caveats to that or anything to figure out in that respect.
Okay, and presumably, I know there's a Facebook group, isn't there, Physio Genie Technology? Is there like a group or something where people can hang out together who are using it and share ideas? And
so one of the things that I spoke to Rich about earlier on, it was sort of an idea we wanted to put forward really, is that after the podcast is finished, we were quite interested in setting up an STA exclusive sort of group where we could share updates on the system. And if anybody wanted to join that group, they can actually reach out to us in the group and conversate with us, and we can share feature updates, exclusives. But it also gives us a chance as well then to ask people about certain features and find out whether we need to dial certain things in or out. That's something that we're interested in setting up if it's something that we can do.
Interesting. And that reminds me of something we were talking before we came on air, where so far, even though it's called Physio Genie Tech, and I understand the reasoning for that, you've had a little bit better response, have you, from kind of non-allied health professionals, so sports therapists and that, as opposed to physios?
Yeah, I think so. The Orion system, I would probably switch that because I suppose sort of your bigger physiotherapy organisations, there's a lot of sort of organisational management features in there, but definitely with Saiph, absolutely. I think more resistance from the physiotherapy world. I think you can see this if you go through LinkedIn and just have a look at sort of discussions around AI. There's a lot of opposition towards it. I think one thing I did pick up on is understanding around, again, what the AI is going to do is a big thing. But I actually think, again, that comes from the technology side and sort of dispelling the myths around the AI rather than, like I say, just putting it out there and seeing how it gets on, actually talking people through what it's trying to achieve. And I think also appeasing some of those thoughts of, is it going to replace people's jobs? I'm of the belief that we will always need front-facing healthcare professionals. From an empathy point of view, I think definitely from that perspective, I would always want somebody to talk me through the process. But it doesn't mean that the AI doesn't help in certain ways if it can streamline certain processes. But that was definitely a message that was difficult to get across to the physiotherapy world, whereas sports therapy seems to be far more receptive.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think it's one of the advantages. Maybe we've talked again on the show quite a lot about regulation, and one of the advantages I think of us not being regulated as an industry is we are a little bit freer to test things out ourselves, and we've just got a bit more of an open mind. We don't feel quite as, oppressed is the wrong word, but just basically regulated by the governors that be in physiotherapy and that, who are worried that they're not acting towards the norms. So yeah, it's interesting. There should be quite a good response, I think. I can understand why there's a bit of response from sports therapists. Question here from Nikki Mansfield. This is something we kind of mentioned off air as well as we were having a little chat beforehand. On the flexibility side, are you planning to create integrations with existing CMSs, say just for the assessment tool?
Can I take this, Rich?
Absolutely, yeah.
I would say on that one, Nikki, no. And the reason I'd say that is because we plan, or we believe, and certainly from my experience, that the Orion CMS will be a standalone product that will be at the top of the industry in terms of its functionality, because we haven't seen anything that does quite what it does yet. I'm really excited to show that product when it's ready. So we don't necessarily feel the need to integrate with other systems for the app. We're quite happy that it integrates internally with Orion. Obviously, if you wanted to integrate on a very simple level, you could generate reports that drag across into your Clinico system or Nuclear, whoever it might be. But yeah, we're planning on sort of an internal integration only.
Good question. Feel free for a follow up there, Nikki, if you so wish. Gary's brought up something I was thinking of actually. A lot of people experienced the collapse, is probably not too emotive a word, but yeah, the collapse of SIF recently, and it was rescued by Tim Allardyce. But it was still in the process of it being a startup with a lot of people getting excited by it. And Gary just says, this is actually comes from a messenger from a member who wants to remain anonymous. And they say, the great thing about startups is the ability to roll with feedback and change functionality. Recently, we had SIF, who, despite major investment in their product, left lots of therapists without access to clinical data, client notes, test results, etc. The product was rescued by an existing service provider. Good old Tim. What guarantee do potential users have that their data will always be accessible? Is it ICO compliant and GDPR compliant? Question mark. There you go. Quite a big one there.
Yes, I think it's a very valid concern. So we're GDPR compliant, and we have processes in place that allow us to provide full user and patient data if it's requested. In some cases, it might take us a little bit of time as it currently stands. But yeah, the processes are in place that you can request all of your data and we'll be able to provide it. Hopefully that addresses the question. I don't see any reason why we would leave people without access, regardless of whatever happens. If it's data that we store, then it should be data that we are able to give you.
Yeah. I think that was one of the, it depends what you read, but I think one of the problems with SIF was it was handed over and the way it was put together was nobody can get in there. It was put together with code and stuff you'll understand much better than I, Rich, and just people who took it over couldn't get in there. They couldn't change things. They couldn't work out what was going on. So it was a complication within the... So if is that possibility? It sounds like, I think SIF was a lot more complicated with all the things it offered than this, but is it something which could potentially happen, or?
I think there's processes before that, isn't there, that we've taken to sort of prevent that?
Yeah, and if it's a case of it being handed off to like other developers or other development teams, I think part of the job of being a software developer, especially like in my position in the startup, is we're not planning on handing it over to anyone anytime soon. But other software developers, even for things like integrations, are as much a customer for me as the practitioners themselves. So nothing I build should hamper someone's attempts to get their own data, and the tools and processes should always be in place to allow that to happen. Like whatever the situation, like if someone comes to our business, Marcus should be able to return the data just as much as I should be able to do that.
Good answer. Good stuff. Nikki has just come back saying, I look forward to seeing the Orion demo then. How's that going to work then? So if people, is there going to be advantage for customers who are already using Saiph when Orion does come out, or?
It's part of the roadmap to figure that part out. Yes,
Okay.
is the short answer. Just on the demo side of things, I'll point out we are keen and quite happy to actually show demos to anybody that wants to see it. So if perhaps I could give my email, if people wanted to see the Orion as it is now, I'd happily jump on a Google Meet and go through it and show you what it does and take some feedback. Again, because we build all the technology in-house ourselves, we're really flexible in that. So if there's anything that people really scream at us that needs to change, then we'll absolutely be happy to facilitate.
Fantastic. There we go. We'll make sure that goes into the notes, so people can contact you if they're interested in that. So what else should we say about? We've got another 5-6 minutes or so. AI. We've talked about in the first episode that people are worried about AI replacing the therapist. We've commented that obviously there's a lot in humans, very complex. There's a lot of interaction with AI at the moment. One day it might have, but at the moment it hasn't got that sensitivity. It can't replace that listening, that empathy. And if it does come back with a response, then like Joe pointed out last week, how are you going to feel as a patient if you have poured your heart out and then the machine kind of goes click click, here's your solution? It's like, have you had a human listen to you? Do you feel like you've been listened to by a machine, however great it looks? So that's, hopefully that is something which as humans we would miss, because otherwise it's painting a pretty horrible picture of healthcare. But you've painted tonight a picture where there are definitely ways where we don't want to be manually trying to drag a line, and we just want AI to be able to use its amazing resources to be able to cut time down and save us time, and therefore give us a more prosperous business. What do you see? Let's imagine AI doesn't suddenly develop and replaces us completely, because that's a bleak thought. What do you see the future of healthcare as, and how do you see kind of like yourselves maybe fitting into it?
I think one of the things, I'm sure Rich will agree with this, I don't think AI can replace us, because AI is very dependent on the data that we give it. So you still need the data to be able to train the AI. I think also there are certain things, again, as you touched on, Matt, that are essential for clinicians: the empathy, the ability to listen, the flexibility that comes with that. And I don't think, it's not a case of can those things be replicated. Maybe they can, but would we want them to, as you said? I think especially when you look at AI in healthcare as a whole, it seems the fear is that it's going to be this sort of autonomous thing that comes through and just takes over everything. And the reality is, I don't think it can ever do that, because there are certain elements where the human contact is not just important, it's essential, it's a necessity. So I don't see a world where AI takes over. I see a world where if we're smart with AI, we can streamline, but that can turn your focus to other elements. For example, if you can save 20 minutes of your assessment and admin time, you might be able to see another client, go to the gym, spend a bit more time with the kids. All these things start to spiral. Again, I'll go back to the same point. I think it's down to companies like ours and other companies to really sort of home in on that and dial in on what people need, not just here's some AI, let's see how it works. I think being responsible with it is probably the overall sort of thought process we need to go through.
That's really interesting. It's nice to hear that, because again, it touches on what Joe brought up last week. It's nice to hear that we're going to use AI not just to be more productive in our business and be able to make more money. It's going to give us some time to look after ourselves when we're not working. Like you said, go to the gym, look after ourselves, spend time with the family. That should kind of be our goal, because that's a human need as well, isn't it? We're not machines, we're not AI. We do need that time, relationships, to look after ourselves as well as our clients. Sorry, Rich, I interrupted. What were you going to say?
No, not at all. I guess I was just going to say, like, on that, from the tech side of the argument, it's like I could see in the wider healthcare sector there being not a requirement, but there might be like a patient desire for a service which is end-to-end automated for some things, right? Because there are a lot of people that might be too embarrassed to go to a doctor about certain things, and knowing that they don't have to interact with another human might actually be something that they would prefer in certain instances. Like, I could see that, but I don't personally at the moment see how it would be possible to completely take the human element out of the field. And I don't actually think that there are a lot of tech businesses or software developers that would want to. I can't speak for everyone, but certainly from my side of things, the excitement I get from this is knowing that I'm making someone's life better. I'm not replacing them. I'm building something with Marcus to make their clinic even better and to help their patient more and to free up their time and basically try and be a force multiplier. And that to me is considerably more exciting than the idea of just trying to like replace someone's job. Like, does that make sense? I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's really nice. Yeah, it's really good to hear. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Great. Well, look, people, it's 8:56. I think we've covered this. I'm just going to bring it up because it's Cecily, and I like Cecily. Cecily says, what are the chances of the data collected being distorted or corrupted? Is it relying on our or its own input? I don't know if that's an easy answer. Yeah, go on.
Want to take this one or should I?
I'm wondering, is that in the context of the data collected to train the AI, or is that the data collected in clinic?
Yes, come back, Cecily.
I'm just, because if it's the data for the AI, it's completely dependent on the quality of the data to build the AI. But I'm just wondering whether if that's the clinical data being corrupted, what sort of do we mean by the corruption element?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she's talking about the data we're collecting being inaccurate. I'm not sure of corrupted as
right.
I think it might be that. It as accuracy, but yeah, I could be wrong.
The data collected in clinic, sorry. Yeah, I think it's to do with accuracy. What's the chance of us doing this assessment and then suddenly the results being wrong, not reliable?
Right, got you. Yeah, so you run your assessment, you come to your portal, and it's not what you. Rich, you're probably better on that one then.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so on that, you have the final say in the data. So you could run your AI-powered shoulder assessment using our beta service and disagree with some of the results. You can edit them, and that'll again pull through to your portal. So we try to make it as streamlined as possible and as nice as possible, but you still have the power to edit your data as you see fit. You have the final say.
And that's healthy as well, I think. You know, I don't know, I can't remember what I used the other day, but I used some AI to transcribe. I think it was on Samsung S23, thinking, oh, wow, look, that was a voice message. Do you want to transcribe your voice message now? And it wasn't worth doing. It was just ridiculous. It was hopeless. And that's Galaxy S23 kind of thing. You would have thought, but it was just embarrassing. If I'd have sent that, and it was collected for a client, if I'd have sent that to them without, I mean, sometimes you need to have a little glance and change a few things, but it was just like, no, don't even bother starting to try to edit it. It was rubbish. So yeah, we're still, it was terrible.
I think this comes back to the ChatGPT thing, though. It's like you can use ChatGPT really well to do certain things, but if you use it to do the whole task, you might run into issues. Like if you don't check it, if you don't use it pragmatically, it's probably not going to be effective. But it can help you, sort of things. It's sort of dialing that in, I suppose.
I think so. But I think when it comes to, I mean, we know research and everything and experience shows it's the relationship, it's the personal relationship with the patient. And one thing ChatGPT does is it just doesn't, it changes you. You're no longer writing in your style. If patients are going to get to know you, as soon as you go to ChatGPT and it's starting using these, I don't even think they're very eloquent, but it's definitely using these flamboyant words which you wouldn't use and you're not going to use when the patient comes through your door, to the extent that when they sit down with you and listen to you for 5 minutes, they're thinking, you're not the one who sent me that letter, are you? That was ChatGPT. And it is, to me, it's that obvious, you know, and I think that is a bit of a, if you're writing a piece, maybe a blog, even a blog for a website, unless everything is in that ChatGPT, then they're not going to know it's you when they meet you. Or if you ask one day to stand up and present, and you start talking and you're not using all of this wonderful eloquence kind of like language features, then they're just going to go, It's not your website, is it? You just got ChatGPT. So I think there's limitations with it,
Oh,
fortunately. And as for drawing the human hand, that's just still way off. It can't seem to draw human anatomy yet either, which is hilarious, and long may be that way. Right, it's 9 o'clock. People, thank you so much for the great questions. Last thing, just to make sure, if people are interested, then Rich Smith and Marcus Slade in signing up for the 7-day free trial to have a look what it's about, then just go to the website. I imagine, is that it? PhysioGenie.com.
Absolutely.
Click the links through there. Yeah, you can cancel at any time. And then if the feedback, as we've heard today from Rich and Marcus, if the feedback is, as a therapist, you really haven't had time to assess it all in those 7 days, and I guess they drop you an email and send that feedback back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're really flexible.
Yeah,
fantastic. Sounds really good. Sounds be interesting to see. Right then, and if people want to follow you on social media, like we said, Instagram is at physio.genie. And then Facebook, if you do a search on Physio Genie Technology, then it will come up as well. Lots of interesting information being put through there. So thank you very much. Cecily has said, thank you, gents. Oh, Cecily, it's very nice. Gary says, thank you, gents. An interesting view of AI. Yeah, very insightful. Enjoyed that.
Gary. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us live. Next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. So that'll be July the 23rd, STA episode 207. The title is going to be, is your client ready to return to sport? We go all human again next week with special guest Steve Miller of growphysioacademy.com. Some of you might have seen at Therapy Expo last year. He's going to be talking at Therapy Expo this year in the STA Theatre as well about this very topic. And incidentally, just to let you know before I go, on the Wednesday, July the 24th, Steve Miller is also at 6:30 p.m. giving a great webinar on managing Achilles injuries in sport. STA members, there's details of all of this in the members area. You get a 15% discount. Love Steve Miller to bits. Really great educator, really passionate. So I would check that out. But if you do want to join us next Tuesday, then simply head along to the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel at 8 o'clock or the Facebook page, depending what you prefer. So just once again, thank you to Rich Smith and Marcus Slade from Physio Genie Technology. Thanks, gents.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. It's been great.
And thanks, everyone, for joining us live. Take care, and hopefully see some of you live next Tuesday. Bye-bye.